This episode of the Western Outdoor News Podcast is brought to you by Western Outdoor News Charters. Our next available charter is on the Pacific Islander. It's a 3.5-day trip departing on October 4th. We've got word from Captain Rick Russell that these guys are going to be definitely targeting some of that larger bluefin tuna out on the Tanner Bank. They expect to do some jigging at night as well, as these bluefin tuna are really reacting to the knife jigs deep. With 3.5 days, you really have a lot of fishing time on this trip, guys. 3 full days of fishing. Again, that trip departs October 4th in the evening and returns October 7th early morning. For all the information on this trip, visit wonews.com. Hey folks, and welcome back to the Western Outdoor News Podcast. This week we sit down with Mike Stevens once again talking about his column Knee Deep, titled So Let's Get This Straight. Mike Stevens, tournament director Billy Egan, and myself sit down and talk about some of the idiosyncrasies in the fishing community.
Let's go back to the color real quick. Because how many guys do you know their favorite iron is one with a paint shoot all the way off it?
Now, before we go knee deep with Mike and Billy on So Let Me Get This Straight, let's talk about some recent news. First off, we just got word that Floyd Sparks' 394.5-pound bluefin tuna is confirmed as the California state record. With the hot bite happening now on the Tanner Bank, it will be interesting to see if it holds for the remainder of the year. In other news on the offshore scene, the yellowfin tuna and skipjack have really moved in down south of the border, and that bite is becoming more and more prevalent as the week goes on. As we work towards the eastern Sierra, we see some really big fish being caught and already some large brown trout being fished out of some of these larger reservoirs. As for the local freshwater scene, DVL and also Paris Reservoir are full speed on the shad right now. Looks like there's tons of bait being pushed back into every cut, every shallow water area, good topwater bites being had at both. As we worked out towards the delta up north, the bass bite is definitely on an upward trend as waters start to cool. So are the striped bass, and big news up there right now is big salmon being taken right now, over 40 pounds for some of those fish. That's on the Sac River side of things. And the big news for this week really is that the lobster opener is Saturday, 6 a.m. That's the lobster opener, 6 a.m. this Saturday. Everyone's looking forward to it. If you hadn't heard from Gil Hernandez and myself talking about it just a few weeks ago, we have a great Lobster Hooping 101 article up on the web right now. It's still live, and there's also a video to tag along with that. Really good information there, folks. I'd recommend if it's your first time lobstering, or even if you're an experienced hoop netter, to check that one out.
Billy Egan's in a great mood today.
He is. He's got a great radio voice, too.
Microphone voice.
Anyway, recent column by Mike Stevens, Knee Deep. We're going knee deep today, guys. So let me get this straight. What is this about? Kind of give us a quick... Or do you want to just go straight in with an example?
I could. No, let me take it back.
Okay.
Like, I've been in this industry since the mid-'90s. I've worked in tackle shops. I've worked in a hatchery. You know, obviously, I've written. And over the years, you just notice things among anglers in the angling community that you question. And I've wanted to write that column for a long time. It's actually really short because a lot of the things I was afraid to put in there. You know, I was afraid of who I would upset.
All right.
But I'll give an example that wasn't even on. I didn't even put it in the column. Like, I was working in a tackle shop in the mid-'90s. I'm really glad Egan's here because I've got a lot of bass ones in here. Everyone remembers, or at least everyone over 30 remembers, the color chocolate blue vein. You know, it was a huge worm color in the 90s and prior.
And you're talking you were down in San Diego.
Yeah, I was in San Diego.
So San Diego Lakes,
so it's a big color down there. So we always had a ton of chocolate blue vein. Well, then some company came out with hot chocolate blue vein, and it came in, and I looked at it, and I'm like, this is chocolate blue vein. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Eventually, we took it out of the package and, like, literally held it under a light and rotated it. And you could see, like, red glitter here and there. Well, then somebody caught something at Hodges with it, and then it, you know, the snowball effect happened, and I'm sure Western Outdoor News had a lot to do with it. But all of a sudden, everybody had to have hot chocolate blue vein. And in the bass world, all it takes is a couple guys to just clear off the peg, and it's gone. Yeah. So then you have weeks of guys coming in saying, I'm looking for hot chocolate blue vein. They get to that empty peg. You've got chocolate blue vein sitting right next to it. Looks exactly the same unless it's held under a light.
That worked 2 weeks earlier.
That worked 2 decades earlier.
Yeah.
And it's just instantly, you know.
Yeah.
that's not,
Wiped
I don't
off.
need that.
Yeah.
I need hot chocolate blue vein. And it was just so frustrating. I mean, we had chocolate blue vein spilling off the peg. No one would touch it because it had to have that. And, Egan's here. He's a bass guy.
That's why chasing somebody else's bite is so crucial to your tournament, to your angling experience. Because if you can't duplicate what somebody else has done, something's wrong with you.
Right. But the way I see it, I don't care what fish it is. I don't like giving a fish too much credit for being too smart.
No.
You know what I'm saying? So
I hear that all the time, especially in the swim bait side. We don't want to train the fish. Let's go.
yeah,
We don't want to train
I
the
could
fish.
seriously go on about the color thing forever. It's just like why aren't those colors around? Or the other Otai special or
The
green
new-
weenie. Now it's all margarita mutilator and I mean,
we all know-
do the fish learn? Do their grandparents tell you never touch
Maybe
this
we
color?
don't all know that colors dissipate as you go deeper in the water, and the light spectrum's not actually getting down there. Where a green is not a green; it's a brown.
Oh, I'm glad he mentioned that because I've got some salt.
Or like that red flake might not even be anything down there.
Right. But then, getting into the column, that was one I didn't even put in there.
Yeah.
The first one I put in there was one, it was about, there's a lot of bass angler versus trout angler stuff. They like to take shots at each other. And a lot of the bass guys, or not even bass guys, some trout guys even, will look down on fishing for hatchery trout.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're not, they're raised in a hatchery. They're fed
Truck tracers?
truck chasers, yeah. But, they're fed
Pellets.
full of protein. I used to work in a hatchery. The pellets are protein and fat.
Yeah.
It's just like they're
meal,
linebackers,
right?
like they're in the NFL. Right.
Yeah.
Bulk.
Right. So the bass guy that clowns the trout guy for chasing those fish goes after those bass with swim baits that look like hatchery trout because they want to catch a bass that got that big for eating those hatchery trout that are chock full of fat and protein and I know bass guys, serious bass guys, Juan Bass pros. I won't name any names, but they are loud about the lack of trout stocking.
Yeah.
They want it, and they say anglers need their trout. And they don't care about trout or dunking night crawlers. They want to feed their bass. They want to feed their bass, and they want their bass that they're chasing to be accustomed to chasing a bait that's 10 inches long.
Yeah.
Totally. But it doesn't matter why they want more trout stocking. Trout guy appreciates it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
a bass will hit a Budweiser can with hooks on it.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So, it doesn't make me angry. I like talking about it over,
Yeah, it's fun to talk about. It's kind of interesting because everyone has their own opinion on all this kind of stuff, and you're talking about the worms and the slight color differences, and now on the saltwater side of that is a surface iron. Mm-hmm. The colors, there's more color surface irons than I've ever seen.
Right.
And then what about the guy sitting there and turning each iron and looking at them for their hips?
Okay. Let's go back to the color real quick. Because how many guys do you know their favorite iron is one with the paint shoot all the way off it?
Yeah.
And it's just the primer or the metal underneath it.
I fish a lot of irons with no paint on them.
Sure.
I take the paint off of irons a lot.
But I know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Because, I've seen plenty of people shopping for irons and the steps they go through.
Yeah, going through and checking. The one thing I might check is the brazing on the ring.
The ring.
Yeah,
Right.
if it's not smooth or it looks suspect, I won't buy it. But other than that, I grab the first one off the rack.
Really?
Leave the sticker on.
Yeah.
That's key.
And what's funny is I've seen guys, like two guys, equally as serious about fishing iron, and they're looking for the exact opposite. Like this guy wants the equal hips.
Yeah.
And this guy wants the
Offset hips. Yeah.
Hips. And I don't know if they do this anymore, but I used to see guys hold it by the ring
And spin
kind
it.
of spin them. And if it wouldn't spin like smoothly, if it get caught, that was a bad one.
Yeah.
And now I hear about guys that they'll buy like 20 irons to keep one.
Yeah.
Well, I learned way back when, this is 2006, 2007, by accident when I was playing around with image baits. When I was bait wrapping things, especially Lunker Punker topwater baits with actual pictures of fish. The bait mimicked exactly what the fish were going after. It was ironic that, one, I did that because I didn't know how to paint, but two, because I figured why not make a bait look like the fish that you think that fish is going after.
Right.
But the ironic part was the anglers didn't see the forest for the trees, because they wanted it to be epoxied and perfect and painted perfect and match the hatch and lock it in. And the reality was all you're doing is temporarily making your lure look like something you think the fish is going to be tempted to eat.
Yeah.
And people lost their mind on it. The bait wrap thing blew up, and everybody had to have this and that. And I literally, at that time, took a picture of scrambled eggs in my pan. And
I remember seeing those bait wraps.
I remember seeing
wrapped
that at
tatty
Hall.
lures and some other lures, JRI lures, with a picture of scrambled eggs, and people lost their you-know-what over it.
Right. Matching the hatch. Fish knows what scrambled eggs look like.
Yeah.
I would never say that one color... I would never say the color doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I would never say a ridiculous color would never work, because I've seen it happen. Another point I wanted to make on there was... when would matching what a fish is eating in real life be a bad idea?
Yeah.
Like I'm saying, even if it's dirty water, you hear dirty water, you use bright colors, and in clear water, you natural colors.
Does the bait change color?
Yeah, the bait. I mean,
The bait stays the same.
right. The
Just
fish
like
is
fishing
still feeding on stuff.
Fishing at night and fishing during the day, it's like, okay, well, a dark color is going to give you a silhouette, but does a bluegill change color
right.
at
A
night?
shad does not turn fire tiger. So
Come on, you've all seen fire tiger minnows out there swimming around your legs.
it's funny. I will never use a fire tiger lure.
Oh, really?
Like Rapalas for trout in the Sierras,
Yeah.
to saltwater. I just can't stand to look at. I don't care if they're chewing the paint off them.
Yeah.
I will not. You will not find a fire tiger lure in any of my boxes.
Whenever anyone tells me they're chewing the paint off, I ask what kind of paint they're using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something in that paint. Is that lead?
Yeah.
Fish are fish.
Yeah. I like fishing like the big bait stuff. I feel like fishing something that looks like a lot of different things. Could be a trout, could be a baby bass, could be a bluegill.
Right.
Just general.
You see a lot of that.
Fish colored.
Right.
Yeah.
You
What
see
color
a
are you
lot-
throwing?
You see a lot of that in fly fishing, where there's certain flies that are absolutely meant to mimic something very specific, if not at a very specific stage in its life. But then you have stuff like woolly buggers, like the amount of different things that could represent, or how many different big bushy flies could be a hopper.
Yeah.
Like, a big stimulator that looks nothing like a hopper.
Could be.
But if it's floating on the water and you're in trout looking up at it, it absolutely can be.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's huge. Definitely. Just it's so funny, all the different little things.
Right.
And
And
Let alone trying to surface iron at freshwater lakes for stripers or bass, because we've done that back in the day. At Diamond Valley, we're throwing a mint-colored surface iron across a point, and a bass and or striper just blows up on it.
I always wondered if anyone ever tried that.
Oh yeah, but people they aren't willing to cross that bridge. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't want somebody to see me throwing this.
Right.
They're too worried about what Paul's going to say or what
Yeah.
Billy's going to say about what Tommy was doing on the water today, instead of just using their instincts.
Right.
But it's funny that you mentioned trout, because trout's they're a little more finicky when you're, especially fly fishing.
Yeah.
It's ironic when I go, I'm a swim bait guy. I don't use a whole lot of flies, although I will fly fish, but I like tempting them with bigger baits. And it's ironic how if you throw a crackback Rapala that's brown trout colored, you're going to catch rainbows. And if you throw a rainbow crackback Rapala, you're going to catch browns. Why? Because that's natural predation.
Sure.
It works.
Yeah.
Right.
At the same time, if you throw a fire tiger and this thing's eating it, it's all reactionary.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fish don't have time to go, oh, is that a minnow?
Right.
Is that the right color?
Yeah.
No, I'm hungry. Or no, it's in my territory. I feel it on my lateral line. I'm going to eat it. That's what I'm born to do, is eat things.
Yeah.
Eat things that can fit in my mouth.
Now, somebody mentioned topwater. Like, why are there so many different colors of topwater baits? Like, from the point of view of a fish, pretend like you're a fish looking up. You see the sky.
It's because we, as humans, overthink everything.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I've fished many, many times at night in pitch black nights with barely any, moonlight or stars out there. You're fishing a black bait on top. And the fish look up. They're not seeing anything. What they see or feel is their lateral line and or disturbance on the water.
Yeah.
And they attack it. Most of the times, if you're fishing from shore, the funniest thing, and it scares the hell out of you at night sometimes, is you'll get a bite at your feet. Because they run out of room and they figure they can trap whatever it was that was swimming away.
Sure.
And you jump about 5 feet when that happens, but it's one of the greatest things that women just don't understand.
Yeah.
Why do you like to go fish at night?
Yeah.
Because it's quiet. Nobody's asking me to do honey-do lists.
Yeah.
Kids aren't pulling at my shorts.
There's no
100%.
competition.
And it's quiet.
I think we might go hit the lake tonight.
Yeah. I get, that some topwater baits will roll onto their side, and part of that is being shown.
Yeah.
But
or a shiny.
if something, just imagine a bass or a striper just charging up at something. Is it going to say, "Oh, that's baby bass"? That's not. That's not rainbow trout. And
They're
just
usually
turn
pretty
around
committed.
at the end.
Well, I've got an analogy for it if we still have time to
Do
chat
it. Do
about
it.
big
Yeah.
baits. Back when I used to build Big Baits, Swim Baits Inc., I had built the Sanaga, which had a door hinge style hinge on it. Well, Mickey Ellis from 316 was the only one at that time, other than maybe Matt Servant, that was doing any baits with door hinges. So I reversed my door hinge so it wasn't the same as his. Well, he was so hell-bent that somebody else was using a door hinge that he came out with his freestyle baits. And prior to that, he had a number of different wake baits and baits that were really catching well. And then he tried to mimic what myself and a couple other guys were doing with his door hinge thing because he wanted to beat everybody to the punch. Well, what maybe he didn't realize, but I noticed, and a lot of the other big bait guys noticed, is part of what worked with his previous lures was the wobble. They had a wobble, which basically essentially flashes
A roll.
that color down below the water line to fish that might be down there seeing a flash just like you would in the saltwater.
Yeah.
And when he came out with this streamline wiggle, he lost that flash, and the fish weren't catching fish on those particular baits because he moved away from what was successful.
Yeah.
Because he was fearful of somebody else invading that space. And just it's kind of ironic that certain baits work because there's something about that bait that's unique.
Yeah, well, that's why, there's such a, like if something gets discontinued, certain things could just be like, all of a sudden your $7 bait's going for $40 on eBay.
Yeah.
Stuff like, is it the Storm Wigglewort that like so many, like on Nationwide, so many bass guys want the original Storm Wigglewort.
original one, yeah.
Because I get that there's something in the action or something.
The way it hunts.
Something worked. Something made it.
The density of it. A lot of those baits, when they try to, when they're producing those baits, like an example, the Lunker Punker in wood, and then they start doing the injected stuff, and they just don't do the same thing.
Right.
They put rattles in them. They make them different.
There's something about sound transmission with baits and material that work.
Yeah.
I really didn't mean to get all into colors and this whole time, but it's cool.
Tangent, but I like it. Yeah,
sure. Well, one more thing. One of my buddy's favorite colors of topwater is clear.
Yeah,
he uses clear baits on clear. What he loves them.
That's
clear poppers, clear walking baits.
Yeah,
so
in clear water, you can't go wrong with clear.
And what out there is clear.
It's like what color fishing line you using? Clear. That's another one.
Some of the other stuff on that I touched on was just stuff from like the last few years, like the swordfish thing has got crazy out here. Like
they just showed up.
No, right?
They drop.
Yeah. Captain Dan, I'm sure you got thoughts on this. I mean, they had to have always been here, right?
They've always been here.
And
There's been a commercial fishery for them for 100 years.
Right, and I used to hear about how guys do it in the Gulf. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, where they would send down a bucket of cement to get deep enough, and then that breaks loose and all that stuff. And a lot of the deep drop stuff that we're doing out here feels that way. But it just, I don't know, to me it seems like it's been within the last 5 years that it's really picked up for like private boaters.
Yeah, the private boater scene was 2 years ago. That was a hot bite. Newport Canyon was going pretty full speed there for a while.
Yeah.
And I had quite a few buddies doing it, and they were getting fish.
Right.
And we had done a lot of research on the deep drop stuff beforehand, and we'd set up rods and reels, and we'd done it a few times, but never really committed. But then that year when they were really biting good, I know a couple of my buddies had one over 400, and they were selling them too because they ended up going full commercial rod and reel for them, and they were able to actually make a little bit of money off those fish, which was pretty cool.
It's the ocean, man. There's still stuff that's untapped.
The yummy flyer. Everybody used to think that it had to be on a kite, it had to be moving, and now guys are getting on dead twitch, just drift baits.
Yeah.
Like bass guys have been doing for a while.
Right. We're always evolving and always figuring stuff out, and the tackle companies are, responding. Daiwa's got electric reels now, and we got the specialized rods for that kind of thing now, and it's part of the SoCal saltwater scene. More than ever, and it just blows my mind that
if you're willing to go bob.
Right. Yeah.
It just
white sea bass fishing at times as well.
Yeah, or catfish fishing.
Catfish fishing.
That's what I call it, going catfish fishing.
Right.
Well, guys, this was, so let me get this straight. We're knee deep with Mike Stevens and Billy Egan. If you guys enjoyed this episode or would like to chime in and be part of this discussion, please feel free to call and leave a message to us here at the Western Outdoor News Podcast. The number is area code 702-850-4WON. That's 702-850-4966. For more information on trips, charters, and events held by Western Outdoor News, visit wonews.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you here next week at the Western Outdoor News Podcast.